In the nearly 3 years since I lost my right leg, I've grown a deep fondness for a very particular subset of games which require a very specific set of skills.
Skills I've acquired over a very long career. Skills that make me a nightmare for people like you.
I'm referring to the subgenre which was popularized by From Software's Dark Souls franchise, often referred to as Souls-like games. The reason I've grown to love them so much recently is that the punishing yet fair difficulty of these games encourages you to accept your inevitable failure, learn, and grow, which was not only one of the few good lines in The Last Jedi, but also the spirit it requires to lose a limb, get back up, and keep on fighting.
The greatest teacher, failure is.
This year has already seen the release of what may very well be my personal favorite Souls-like, Sekiro Shadows Die Twice, and just in time for the end of the year, Titanfall developer Respawn has given us our first ever Star Wars Souls-like, Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. Jedi Fallen Order takes place in the era between the film Star Wars Episode III Revenge of the Sith and the film Star Wars. The film, which came out in 1977, is called Star Wars, and the cool kids still call it that, don't at me. Actually, my Twitter could probably use the engagement, so you can at me. Please at me? You take the role of Jedi Padawan Cal Kestis, 5 years after Order 66 left him on the run without a master. The story is fairly simple. A Jedi Master has left a trail of breadcrumbs to a holocron which contains the identities of Force-sensitive children. Sort of a youngling knock list. The tale is certainly a step above the recent entries we've seen from the Disney Star Wars era. That's not to say it's an incredible story which will blow your mind, but Cal is a likable protagonist who really struggles to succeed, and that does a lot to help us, the players, bond with him. The crew of your ship, the Mantis, is also quite engaging. BD-1 is your trusty droid companion, and he's not only super helpful as your zipline apparatus and backpack medic, but he's exactly as charming as a more agile version of Wall-E sounds. Grease is the multi-armed alien captain of the ship, similar to Jon Favreau's charming yet short-lived character from Solo. Cal's guide for most of the game is the retired Jedi Seer, who, like Cal, has also cut herself off from the Force after a brush with the dark side. I'm still not crazy about the core concept of one being able to cut themselves off from the Force, but it's utilized here more effectively than in other Disney Star Wars tales, mostly due to the lack of context we have for Cal and Seer prior to this game, unlike certain other Jedi Masters in Disney Star Wars stories.
You've closed yourself off from the Force.
Because that's what heroes do.
For Seer, it creates an interesting internal conflict with which the main antagonist of the game is developed, and for Cal, being cut off from the Force functions as a narrative justification for requiring gameplay effort to regain Force abilities which he had already learned as a child. The final member of the crew is Merrin, who is one of the Night Sisters of Dathomir, a group of witches who will be familiar to fans of the Clone Wars. When you meet Merrin, she's as you'd expect an angry Night Sister to be, but when she joins the team, she's full of charm, and if I have any complaint about her, she just didn't have enough screen time. We'll be together someday, my Dathomiri waifu.
Oh, Grease.
Yeah?
I take my steak rare.
From a visual standpoint, the game is quite solid overall. While most EA titles over this console generation have been forced to use DICE's Frostbite engine with mixed results.
Alright, what happened? To who? To whom? And your goddamn father. Sorry, my face is tired from dealing with everything.
Respawn doesn't seem to play by those rules. They used Valve's Source Engine for the Titanfall games and Apex Legends, and Jedi Fallen Order uses Epic's Unreal Engine 4. You won't catch me defending Epic's store for a single second, but their game engine is pretty great. The lighting is the real star of the show here, with your lightsaber functioning as a mobile, colored light source, which not only shines an aesthetically pleasing glow on the world and the enemies, but is also used to great effect as your in-game flashlight. The character animations are a bit less consistent, with the main character models looking quite good for the most part, even if Deborah Wilson's prominent eyes, forgive the term, but pop a bit more than they did in Wolfenstein: The New Colossus. Cameron Monaghan's performance shines though, notably during an ice cave sequence in the back half of the game. The secondary characters did not fare so well, sadly, with their models seeming like they were plucked out of a PS3 game, and the Wookiees looking notably bad. If you're not going to take the time to make the Wookiee fur look as good as Cal's flowing ginger locks, maybe don't set roughly 20% of the game on Kashyyyk. I don't have a single complaint about the sound, but sound in a Star Wars game is a bit of a gimme. The only piece of licensed music which is used twice in the game is notably cool though, and gives us a glimpse into what teenagers might be bumping on their space iPods during the early days of the Empire. I'd play more of it, but Disney claimed it during 2 streams on my yet-to-be monetized channel, and I don't want Jeremy to fire me just yet.
I might need to fire Marc. I brought this motherfucker here for gaming, and he can't even, like, move
He's literally
to the
just
left or the
walking
right.
off pipes
Well,
and
my
shit.
controller started working again, that's the good news.
Marc, I totally wish I was next to you right now so that you could hand me your controller so I can do this for you.
Cal's journey takes you to several planets which are loaded with nooks and crannies to explore, many of which are gated by specific abilities. So much like the Batman Arkham games, modern Tomb Raider, or going back a bit further, Super Metroid and the Igarashi-era Castlevania games, acquiring a new ability gives you not only the means to progress further down the critical path, but also an incentive to return to previously visited areas and uncover new secrets. Sometimes these return visits are required by the story, but you're also free to return to any planet you visited at any time to explore for things you may have missed. Respawn executes this quite well for the most part, as the abilities in question tend to make sense within the context of Star Wars, with things like Force Push, Force Pull, and the Force Slow, which Kylo Ren uses at the beginning of The Force Awakens, all used to unlock new areas of the map and solve puzzles in a seemingly organic fashion. The other abilities you acquire don't fit quite as neatly into the Star Wars universe, but are a lot of fun to use regardless, and what would a Respawn game be without double jumping and wall running? Also, if you haven't played Titanfall 2, please play it immediately. It's one of the best first-person shooters ever made. While the act of exploring is fun and it's extremely satisfying to return to a previously blocked pathway with a new ability that lets you traverse it, the loot and secrets you find are sadly not very interesting. The only functional loot are the gold Stimpack chests, which increase your healing item capacity, but every other secret just gives you another cosmetic item for your lightsaber, poncho, droid, or ship. These new skins aren't very crazy or interesting either, just color swaps which provide no gameplay change or advantage, so unless you're hunting for metagame trophies and achievements, there's not really any incentive to explore once you've found the 8 Stimpack chests. The only upgrade system is the skill points you earn through exploration and kills, which you spend on the rather limited character progression tree. While the Tomb Raider games encourage you to scour for weapon parts which you can use to upgrade your guns, scrap which can be used to upgrade your gear, and skill points, all of which makes you want to find and clear all of the tombs, the exploration incentive in Jedi Fallen Order is very low. Also similar to the Tomb Raider games, in addition to Sony's Uncharted series, Fallen Order features complex puzzles which require solving, and some cracks in the game's armor are seen here too. The puzzle design isn't terrible, in fact in some respects it's quite good. The problem is that the game's lack of polish starts presenting issues when the player's brain sees the solution, but the game's physics are demanding that you solve the puzzle in a very specific way, rather than allowing for a bit of leeway and experimentation. The Ice Temple puzzle was the example that hit me the hardest. I could pull the rope which was attached to the crystal around, but it wouldn't let me pull it into the path of the sunbeam unless I grabbed it from a precise corner on a very specific ledge. Or maybe I'm just stupid. It is possible I'm stupid, I'm not ruling that out at this time. When you're not traversing environments or solving puzzles, you'll be fighting with your lightsaber, and for the most part, the lightsaber combat feels great, and despite the fact that they absolutely must have been in development at the same time, it takes a lot of cues from my 2019 Game of the Year, From Software's Sekiro, Shadows Die Twice. Like in Sekiro, parrying attacks is the cornerstone of the combat. You can ordinarily block most attacks so long as the enemy doesn't flash red prior to attacking, which indicates an unblockable strike, but timing a press of the block button perfectly will result in the enemy being knocked off balance, giving you the opportunity to counterattack. At higher difficulties, this skill becomes absolutely necessary and encourages the player to get good by getting a feel for the combat rhythm, and rather than button tapping and hoping for the best, paying attention to the enemy attack animations and consciously deciding whether to jump, evade, roll, block, or take the chance on that parry. Each enemy action will have a few correct player reactions, and learning these are the difference between looking like a doofus swinging a glowing baton around and looking like a true Jedi. Both you and your enemies have a stamina gauge, which dictates how much normal blocking they can do, and one boss in particular is designed around breaking his stamina before you can do any damage at all, and even this is similar to Sekiro's posture system. There are even execution animations, which are far less bloody than those found in Sekiro, but are still super satisfying and look fantastic. I'm a huge proponent of the From Software games never adding an easy mode because I think their absolute insistence that the player fail repeatedly, learn, and rise to their steep challenge is part of what makes them so special. But Jedi Fallen Order's difficulty levels are a nice addition, as they can let players who may not have experience with Souls-like games dip their toes in the water and get some experience with this subgenre. So if you're new to this style of game and you do enjoy Fallen Order's combat, I strongly recommend checking out Sekiro. There's a link to my full review of that game in the description. But word of warning, even on Jedi Grandmaster difficulty, Fallen Order isn't nearly as hard as Sekiro, but I believe in you, you can do it. While the combat in Fallen Order is good, it's also not perfect, and the lack of overall polish is seen here too. Tight hitboxes are a big part of a good Souls-like, and even From Software isn't perfect on this front, as anyone who's played Dark Souls 2 can attest to. For those who may not be familiar with the term, a hitbox is the shape of the game code which represents a weapon. A tight hitbox is usually a descriptor used when the invisible game coding is modeled very closely to the weapon model visible to the player. So if a hitbox is designed well, the player is able to easily determine how close they can get to an enemy attack without taking damage from it. For a masterclass on this and other related concepts, check out MauLer's response to H-Bomber Guys in defense of Dark Souls 2. It's the long man at his longest and manliest. In Jedi Fallen Order, the hitboxes are often pretty good, but there are a lot of moments when enemies will damage you despite you being behind them, not damage you despite landing a perfect strike, or dodges and evades just not working the way they should. While I'm certain this wouldn't be much of a problem on Story Mode or Jedi Knight difficulties, on the two difficulties I played, Jedi Master and Jedi Grandmaster, no big deal. The issues with the hitboxes would create moments where a punishing death would come at the hands of bad game testing and QA, rather than my own lack of skill. I say that without irony or pride either, as while I am skilled at Souls-like games, I'm by no means a master, as anyone who watched our Geeks and Gamers launch night stream can attest, but when one of these games is designed well, like From Software's current hat trick of Dark Souls 3, Bloodborne, and Sekiro are, death is your fault, rather than the game's. The realization that you messed up and you can learn from that failure and improve is what makes this subgenre so compelling, so it's a fairly large issue when failure is often down to a dice roll of the game's code. Ultimately, my biggest problem with the game is that it could have turned out nearly perfect if it were given more development time. I don't mean to put the tinfoil hat on too tightly, but looking at EA's current slate, there isn't any other big moneymakers launching for them this season, so it wouldn't surprise me if EA management insisted that this game ship in November, regardless of whether or not it was ready. The good news is, if Respawn continues to work on the game, polish up the mechanics, and work on the numerous bugs, there is a really fantastic Star Wars game here, in addition to a spectacular introduction to one of my personal favorite subgenres. Sadly, right now, what we have is a good game, which is also kind of a glitch-riddled mess.
Seriously. Okay, one just disappeared. Yeah. What? Did y'all see that? He just, disappeared.
So while I do recommend Jedi Fallen Order, it's with the caveat that if you don't have a strong personal desire to play it immediately, it will likely become a far better game in a couple months, which is also when you're likely to see it on sale. With that said, if patience is not one of the pillars of your personal Jedi teachings, Jedi Fallen Order is still a very fun game with a decently written story, some compelling characters, intense combat, satisfying traversal, and a handful of interesting planets to explore. There aren't very many original ideas on display here, but the game manages to cohesively pull together elements of Souls-like games, the ARKHAM games, Tomb Raider, and Titanfall, then set it all against a Star Wars backdrop with mostly successful results. So if you're willing to put up with a few glitches and hiccups, MarcTheCyborg recommends Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order. With this game and The Mandalorian both launching, 2019 is shaping up to be a great year for Star Wars. November 2019 was a pretty great month for Star Wars.
Hey everyone, it's Jeremy from geeksandgamers.com, and if you're a fan of Geeks and Gamers, please go to our website, visit our merchandise store. We have t-shirts, hoodies, hats, beanies, tank tops, and in the very near future, we're going to have many more products for you to choose from. So thank you for the support. We appreciate it. You guys have a great day, and we will talk to you later.